Digital Foundry is proudly sponsored by the Logitech G935 headset.
The best thing about Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled on Switch? That it's easy to forget you're even playing on a handheld, and the core game is often as robust as any other. Switch offers a genuine contender in the search for a definitive release in this sense. You get a 30fps kart racer with every track included, just like PS4 and Xbox One, only now with the option to play on the go. There are some caveats too, of course. Native resolution is cut to 720p while docked, down from 1080p on the other machines, and visual settings are pruned back elsewhere. But Nitro-Fueled still looks great on Switch overall, so just how far did the developer have to go to make this happen? And what of performance stability? Let's find out. First off, cramming the entire game into a 6GB install is no small feat. Next to the 16GB on PS4, it's not the most extreme case of downsizing, but it's worth touching on why there's a difference at all. As always, video files within the install are a prime area of cutbacks. To trim the install size down, the quality of pre-encoded videos are dropped on Switch. It mainly affects the campaign mode. The intro scene shows macro block compression, but generally speaking it gets away with it, especially if you're playing on Switch's smaller screen. On a big TV while docked, it might stand out, but these scenes are rare enough it doesn't hamper the experience too greatly. First impressions are great otherwise. In terms of features, everything's included from PS4 or Xbox One. Every track is accounted for, including the remakes of the PS2 era Crash tracks. The menus are slick and everything flows beautifully, plus you get a choice between the original and remastered soundtrack in the options. To my ears, these hold up in compression quality to the other consoles. Certainly the music doesn't show heavy signs of low bitrate encoding, unlike recent Switch ports like Assassin's Creed 3. The only weak point that sticks out is the sound effects on selecting an option, but elsewhere Switch delivers the goods. What of the game itself then? Let's kick off with the resolution side first. Docked play under a TV runs at a native 1280x720, which makes sense given the relative power next to PS4, running as it is at 1080p. Yes, it's a shame when you consider Nintendo squeezes 1080p and 60 frames per second out of the system in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Nitro-Fueled has different priorities clearly. Per object and full motion blur plus ambient occlusion feature on Switch, neither of which make the cut in Mario Kart. In terms of presentation then, Crash has a more CG film-like appearance with these layered on. But supposing that was the trade-off against 60fps playback, the gameplay experience just isn't as smooth. 720p and 30fps are the reality here, at least for docked play while playing solo. There's a twist though. The bedrock of any great kart racer is its multiplayer, and Nitro-Fueled channels the spirit of the PlayStation original with split-screen support. Even on Switch, we have parity with every other console. It's 30 frames per second all round, but to achieve this, tweaks are made to resolution. Now, playing in 2-player split screen keeps the same rendering as 720p. Bumping it to 4 players though incurs a res hit while you're playing docked. You're looking at 1024x576 during a 4-way split, which to be frank does stick out. That only gives each player a 512x288 window to work with, and at that point the action starts to become harder to decipher. It's bearable, but also the biggest cutback I can see next to PS4 or Xbox One. Portable play has a different setup entirely. No matter what mode you select, the game renders at 854x480 based on my testing, even with a 2-player split-screen game on the go. Meanwhile, we can't see how Switch copes with anything higher because, as it turns out, 4-player support is disabled while portable. Dividing a 6-inch screen between so many players may have involved another drop in resolution, and given the tiny screen size, might have made it impractical. Either way, running at 854x480 isn't the best turnout, but it's still plenty of pixel detail to serve 1 or 2 players. Differences between docked and portable play are thankfully few and far between. Besides dropping from 720p to 480, there's only one other change, in shadow quality. You'll notice the shadows lining the hub world and the Crash Cove starting grid are softer in the distance. The textures, effects and every other aspect of the game stay intact either way, but this is the only standout change. So if you can cope with the extra pixel shimmer and slightly softer shadows, it's still a great way to enjoy the game on the move. The big screen experience obviously suffers compared to the other 4 consoles. Next to Xbox One X, the best looking release with a 1440p picture and enhanced ambient occlusion, there's a swathe of other changes. Even looking at the in-engine tutorial at the start, you can see texture resolution on the ground and the rocks in the background are cut down. Surprisingly, it never stands out while racing, with the motion blur disguising so much of the normal mapping detail. But still shots truly highlight the downgrade. The 3.5GB of reported memory available to developers on Switch is a factor, and yes, texture pack size has been reduced. Does it affect the game in motion? Well, I don't think so, and it's even less of an issue when played as a handheld. It's still a handsome looking game, and only by comparison does it really stick out. Likewise, the tessellation effect on gravel is seemingly removed too, and so Switch misses the 3D detailing around the hub area. It's a shame, but inevitably part of moving to a mobile chipset, and it still holds up on its own. Perhaps the more stark change is the cuts in environment detail. This isn't a simple matter of draw distance. Entire chunks of plant life detail are removed outright, making the hub and Crash Cove appear more barren. Similarly, there's tweaks to parts of the geometry, but fundamentally the Switch version keeps every other element. It's surprising how much it does actually retain, and overlooking the foliage, you're getting every circuit as presented on PS4 or Xbox One. The last drawback, visually speaking, is in shadow resolution. It's the least noticeable trade-off, but docked play on Switch produces more stair-stepping on these long streaking lines of shade on sunny stages. Given there's no PC release of Nitro-Fueled, it's a glimpse into how a lower-end preset might look. So it goes for ambient occlusion as well. Switch still qualifies for the effect, but it's slightly dithered by comparison to the other consoles. All of these cutbacks sound aggressive, but are nicely covered up in motion. If you can ignore the 720p resolution, it honestly holds its own. Now the only part I would advise on is the loading times on Switch, which are longer than any other system. On the one hand, Switch has smaller assets for textures to load in all round, but on the other we're dealing with slower LPDDR4 memory. And sadly, that does still mean a lengthier wait to get to a race from the hub world. So let's go to the tests. The setup is simple enough here. Jumping into the Ruse Tube stage on the base PS4, the loading time to the intro is 26 seconds. It takes longer on Switch, which gets there at 41. That's a 15-second extra wait, and while your mileage may vary with faster SD cards, I'm using the integrated memory here for the benchmark. It's something to be wary of going in. I tried a repeat test on the Crash Cove stage, this time against Xbox One X, and it's a similar turnout. 24 seconds on X, up against the 38 on Switch. Frame rate is a big point. I went into this expecting a real challenge for Switch, especially with 4-player games, which we'll get to later on. To my surprise though, in single player, every stage I've tried runs at a stable 30fps most of the time. What's surprising is the way it holds 30fps too. You'll catch very rare drops, and frame time spikes to 16 milliseconds, but surprisingly it holds up well. It's also fully V-synced, so should it drop, you won't get any screen tear, unlike the other consoles. The only snag is frame pacing at 30fps is uneven, but the spikes to 16 milliseconds are very irregular. There's more to play, but I've run through almost every track by this point, and I can say I came away very impressed. All things considered, Switch hitting and holding 30fps is a plus point overall. When it came to PS4, Xbox One, and especially Pro and X, it's a shame 60fps wasn't considered. On Switch though, achieving parity with the big consoles at 30fps only puts it in a positive light. Outside of Mortal Kombat 11 or Rocket League, it's usually the case we get 30fps renditions of titles running much higher on more powerful systems. There's no way to overlook Nintendo's achievements with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but given no version of Nitro-Fueled exists so far with a higher refresh, it's much easier to accept. Better still, 30fps is also the usual result in portable play, while in campaign races at least. Docked or portable, Switch nails it here, but that does depend on playing in typical races. Those fortunes change when moving to the more taxing battle mode, maxed out with all AI carts. Bizarrely, there are frame rate dips here, but only while Switch is docked. So expect drops to 27fps in the Rampage Ruins stage, with only one player on screen. Using the same stage once again in portable mode, Switch fares better, 30fps locked all the way through some intensive battling. Given the resolution drops to 480p here, it's possible there's more of a GPU overhead to cater for these bursts of alpha effects. The smoother way to play this mode is away from the TV then, but overall docked play holds up too. Split screen play is also surprisingly robust, from what I've tested. Docking the Switch and running with 4 players, that res drop to 1024x576 seems to be enough to preempt major frame rate lurches. Battle mode or otherwise, I've yet to find anything below 30 FPS, though it's very possible, so far so good. I plan to play quite a bit more of Nitro-Fueled, so if I do spot anything otherwise, I'll add an update. The outlook so far has been better than I'd expected, but again for 4-player, it does seem to be down to dropping the resolution to a point where image quality is visibly pared back compared to solo play. Much the same story for running portably with 2 players. Keeping this to just 2 camera views helps massively in avoiding drops under 30. Everything considered, it's hard not to be impressed by Nitro-Fueled on Switch. Positives first, it's a feature-complete edition, running at the same 30 FPS target and largely hitting it. Resolution and visual settings take a hit, but in solo play it holds up surprisingly well. The only negatives? You will see image quality degrade with 4 players, with that drop to 576p. Also, expect gameplay to drop below 30 FPS in certain modes too, notably the battle mode, but all round, this package is well tailored to the system. Given how well Nitro-Fueled translates to Switch, next to PS4 and Xbox One, it wouldn't be a surprise if this was factored in early in development. It ranks up there as one of a handful of conversions that holds up respectably in side-by-sides. For Switch owners, that means Crash Team Racing is very much enjoyable on the move, or with 4 players at home, another credit to the console's flexibility. For me, it's an easy one to recommend. But that's all I have time for. If you did enjoy this video, please feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications as any video lands. For the source file to this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.
Featuring 2.4 GHz wireless, 50mm Pro G audio drivers, and DTS Headphone X 2.0 surround sound technology under the hood, the G935 headset delivers the ultimate wireless audio solution for gamers, whether you're playing on PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, or mobile. Order yours today from Logitech G.